Thank you for listening to Radio Free Idlewild, the official music and podcast station for Idlewild, California, the San Jacinto Mountains, and beyond.
Hey guys, it's your boy Savage here to tell you about one of my favorite places to hang whenever I'm in Idlewild, the Idlewild Brew Pub. They feature 21 of their own specialty crafted on-tap beers, as well as some of the most delicious pub-style food around. The Brew Pub has a full bar offering craft cocktails and spirits too good to pass up. They're also famous for their to-go beers, so you can enjoy their great tasting house brews back at the cabin. The Brew Pub utilizes only the best ingredients in their beers: crisp and clean Idlewild well water, style-specific malted barley and other grains from the U.S., England, Belgium, Canada, and Germany, as well as fresh hops from around the globe. And best of all, they're an official supporter of the Idlewild International Cinema Festival. So come on down and join me for some great mountain hospitality at Idlewild Brew Pub, and check out their website at idlewildbrewpub.com, and I'll see you there. Cheers.
Since its opening in 2015, Faro Restaurant has been one of Idlewild's leading restaurants, applauded for both its gracious service and casual take on fine dining. Nestled in the heart of the beautiful alpine village of Idlewild, California, Faro is more than just great food and elegant surroundings. It's a treasure destination not to be missed. Faro Restaurant, an official sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema. It's Italian, elevated.
The Riverside County Film Commission and the Riverside County Economic Development Agency are proud to sponsor the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema. With a region of over 7,300 square miles, the Riverside County Film Commission works closely with all 28 cities located within its borders, as well as state and federal agencies, to help streamline your production and ensure its success, assisting with everything from permitting in all jurisdictions to finding just the right locations for your shoot and many other production necessities. Riverside County, the perfect fit for your next film production.
You're listening to The Stephen Savage Show on Radio Free Idlewild. And now, here's your host, film and television director, Stephen Savage.
Thank you, Nicole. How you doing, everybody? Savage here with you for another special archived episode of The Stephen Savage Show, the official podcast of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema. And we're coming to you as usual from Cranium Wheel Studios at Chateau Esteban in the beautiful alpine village of Idlewild, California, just a couple hours east of Los Angeles, but a world away at nearly 6,000 feet, high atop majestic Mount San Jacinto and overlooking the great Coachella Valley. And just to note, this podcast, as with the Idlewild Cinema Festival itself, is completely non-corporate, and all of our advertisers are specific to Idlewild, California. This helps us to promote the town of Idlewild itself, as well as the film festival and all the businesses that surround this beautiful village. And one of those Idlewild-specific partners is our official lodging sponsor and a sponsor of this podcast, Talk Eats Pines Retreat, Idlewild's premier venue for weddings, family reunions, romantic getaways, or just about any large or small gathering or event. So if you're coming to Idlewild for the film festival or at any time during the year, you owe it to yourself to check out the many charming cabins and cottages that make up this amazing mountain venue. Check them out today and book your Idlewild lodging at talkeatspines.com. That's TAHQUITZ, talkeatspines.com. Okay, so as our regular listeners know, the show is officially on hiatus as I work with my production partners gearing up for 2 feature films that I'm directing over the next 18 months. And I've been doing my best, though, to come into the studio as time allows to either do updated introductions like this one to some of our archived episodes, or to actually conduct new interviews with people I think the listeners would appreciate as we can find time to do it. So today I'm bringing you an interview that I conducted back in late 2024 with renowned musician and music producer Chris Goss. Chris is known as the creator of the legendary desert rock sound of the late 90s and early 2000s, and for producing such iconic bands as The Cult, Kyuss, Queens of the Stone Age, and many others. And I met Chris back in the 90s at a gig he and his band, Masters of Reality, were playing a couple of nights at the Hollywood Palladium, and that band included the great Ginger Baker on drums, the drummer from Cream, just a legendary and iconic musician. And I was introduced to Ginger that night as well, and we'll talk about that collaboration during this interview. So anyway, let's get on with the show and my interview with the great Chris Goss, and I think you guys will enjoy this. So enjoy. Okay, let's kick things off for today's podcast. My guest is someone whom I've admired for, 30 years now, if not more, as you will no doubt gather from this introduction, since I was a younger gunslinging musician living in Hollywood. He may not remember this at all, but I was introduced to him through his amazing wife, the iconic rock and roll insider Cynthia Miska, just before my own band garnered a recording deal with A&M Records, and we were playing all over the Sunset Strip. And I had some amazing heroes at the time, and this man was one of them, and I was honored to get to meet him finally after a show he did at the Hollywood Palladium, I believe, with his amazing band Masters of Reality, which he formed with legendary drummer Ginger Baker. I had discovered the band first through mutual friends and this very memorable MTV black and white video that was getting a lot of airtime at the moment. It's pretty cool. And my friends and I used to blast their second album, Sunrise on the Suffer Bus, through the store sound system at the Guitar Center in Hollywood where I worked. And we'd play it so loud we couldn't hear the customers sometimes. But he then went on to produce and play with some major acts in what became known as the desert rock sound, which came out of the Joshua Tree and Palm Desert music scene just east of Los Angeles, and made a huge splash on the world for sure. And these would include his own band, Masters of Reality, of course, along with Queens of the Stone Age, Kyuss, and so many other great acts that he helped bring to the forefront of the rock world. He's credited with having worked and played and jammed with acts like, Stone Temple Pilots, Foo Fighters. I think he did an appearance with Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top on the Conan O'Brien show. I think he did some producing with Ian Astbury of the Cult, and the list just goes on and on. I could be here all day talking about this man's accomplishments, but what I loved is that all the while he was doing all that, he was remaining at the top of his guitar playing prowess with Masters of Reality, which I love. The guy's just a great player. In short, he's the real deal, and I'm excited that he's found time to come onto my podcast today. So, zooming in from his dig somewhere out in the desert near Joshua Tree, let me bring on Mr. Chris Goss. Chris, how are you, man?
I'm okay today. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. Hope that wasn't too rambling, but I just want everybody to know that you've kind of been an important sort of influence on my musical stuff, and I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that you're just like I said, the real deal, and you've done a lot you've been a mover and shaker in rock and roll for a while, so I love that. There's a bit of movie trivia here. You and I have a small crossover connection with the late great Michael Madsen, who just passed away a few weeks ago. I directed Michael in a film called Cosmic Radio, which is still streaming on Amazon Prime, I believe. And you contributed a song to a very cool sort of cult classic film called Death in the Desert. And I think the song was it Only the Lonely? I believe that's what it was. And I wanted to start off by asking you, have you done a lot of music work in the past? Because I have to tell you, I'd love to collaborate on some original musical score stuff with you. My next film, Monkey Grip, which will be filming partly out in your area, out in J-Tree, before we move on to Vegas and Lake Havasu. But I've been curious. I'm not exactly sure what sort of involvement you've had with scoring movies or, loaning certain music to film.
Yeah, I scored that film, Death in the Desert, with Michael in it, and created one cover song for it, which was Only the Lonely.
Right.
And then, did the rest of the musical inserts as well. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of tedious, actually, and to score, because you see the director's phone number pop up on your phone like 12 times a day. and I don't like to work like that. You know, I kind of like to be left alone, but, and anyway, yeah, I guess it goes back to, Marked for Death, where, the Steven Seagal film,
right.
The first time it ever had music in a film, and actually appeared in the film as well briefly, but, there's, you know, other tracks have been used in films, but specifically, I can't think of anything right now. You know, I'm still waking up.
Right. It is for musicians, especially for musicians who have a lot of experience, to be thrown into that film scoring world. And most of my friends who've done it kind of say it's more tedious than really it's worth. But you know, in your case, it'd be great to see you doing a lot more of that, though I know it's just kind of, it's hard for some artists to have to answer to producers, directors, things like that. Just leave me alone, let me create, and let me do it, you know?
Yeah, I'm willing to deliver what they're looking for. But if they're not sure, then, you know, that's the thing. I mean, I know when I worked with Josh Evans on the Death in the Desert movie, after a few months of composing pieces for him, he calls and say, what if you just throw them together all randomly without any, you know, attention to the scenes at all? And I'm like, great, you know, great idea. Like, you know, so, you know, if Michael Madsen's taking a shit, then this, you know, dramatic music should be, you know, playing anyway. So, yeah, I tended to over dramatify. Is that a word?
Yeah.
The music. And, you know, like I was, you know, writing music from, you know, some war movie or something. But in any case, I would approach it differently, you know, next time. And, but yeah, it's okay. You know, it's work, I guess, you know.
But you should, even if it's a paid gig, you know, you still I mean, you know, artists don't look at things as just jobs, you know. Then we want to think you're involved in the actual creative process. And just it sounded to me like he didn't have much of a vision of what I mean, when I say vision, I mean musically. It is a vision in your head that where you want, what kind of music you want and where you want it. And yeah, I can see how that'd be frustrating.
Well, the problem that pops up, the very first track I did for the film was Only the Lonely, the cover of the Motel song.
Right.
And so he loved that so much, he wanted more of that.
Right.
And that's kind of say, you know, like, write another hit, you know, that you didn't write. You know what I mean? Right. And so, I mean, I'm very proud of that version, but that's really tough for me to you know, go in with an intention like that. You know, like, I did that once for you, now you know, whatever. But yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, it's a process, and it's like anything else. You have to be on the same page. And yeah, I love the Motels. They did some great stuff, but to pick, you know, to choose that as a cover to do was very interesting. I've met Martha Davis a few times. She was very cool, but a great songwriter. But did you find that like creating a cover tune for the track, was that something that you saw when you read the script, or what made you choose that song?
Josh Evans requested it.
Gotcha.
And I, you know, did an electronic version of it, basically, you know, and it just fell together really nicely. It was like a really easy thing to accomplish. And then, you know, he said, do you want to score to the rest of the film? I said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So, you know, expecting more of that, you know.
Right.
So that's hence the problem, you know, like, you know, because I kind of find it hard, like most of the records that my band does, you know, they all tend to drift from one thing to another. And so I'm pretty self-conscious about repeating myself, you know.
I've always found your music, one of the things most interesting about, well, the Masters of Reality stuff is that it's got, your influences are so diverse, but there are songs that sound kind of like they've got an East Texas kind of vibe, and then you've got songs that have a sort of late 60s Beatles kind of vibe, and I've always found it really interesting, the kind of eclectic moves you make in and out of music when you're writing and recording. So I think that you're one of those people that plays with your influences, and you're not trying to copy anybody, but there's a feel there that you're able to put into your music that I find really interesting. I like to start my interviews by giving my listeners a chance to get some background info on my guests. So if you're okay with it, I'd like to give my listeners a little background on the real Chris Goss. I mean, your childhood, your musical roots and training, all that stuff that made you the artist that you became and you are today.
Hi, it's Ashley Stewart from Team Stewart at Idlewild Realty, your trusted local expert in the heart of Idlewild, California. Whether you're buying your dream cabin, selling your mountain home, or looking for the perfect investment, our team delivers unmatched knowledge, personal service, and real results. From cozy cabins to stunning view properties, Team Stewart makes it happen. Visit idbroker.com today. Your Idlewild adventure starts here.
Idlewild isn't just a scenic mountain town, it's a living gallery. The Art Alliance of Idlewild supports local artists, funds youth art programs, and hosts world-class events that turn our town into an art lover's destination. Become a member, attend an event, or donate to support the arts. Follow us on Instagram at Art Alliance of Idlewild, or visit artinidlewild.org and be part of our creative community.
Welcome to the world of New Spirit Vacation Homes, Idlewild's premier vacation home rental provider. Whether it be an escape from the heat, a visit to the snow, or for the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema, we have the perfect vacation rental for you. New Spirit Vacation Homes is distinctive from any other vacation rental company, not only because our guests have the broadest choice of luxurious homes to choose from, but also because we ensure guests' expectations are met and they have the most enjoyable and fulfilling getaway. New Spirit Vacation Rentals, an official sponsor of the Idlewild International Film Festival. Find us at newspiritvacationhomes.com.
Born out of creativity and desire, the Peak Restaurant and Bar at Talkeet's Pines is a must-see experience for anyone visiting the beautiful alpine village of Idlewild, California. Featuring a mix of local and international cuisine, the Peak Restaurant and Bar is the centerpiece of the Talkeet's Resort. Set amid gorgeous mountain surroundings and miles of hiking trails, the Peak is unlike any other eatery around. And as an official sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema, the Peak is home of the event's famous Filmmakers Village every year. The Peak Restaurant at Talkeet's Pines Retreat. Come dine with us.
Woodland Park Manor, one of Idlewild, California's best-known and beloved lodging destinations, is a rustic treat for the casual overnighter or vacation traveller. With its many unique rooms and cottages and that special hideaway feel, Woodland Park Manor gives new meaning to the word relaxation. Nestled among the tall pines and centuries-old oak trees, the manor says Idlewild the moment you enter the property. As a sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema since year one, all festival attendees are treated like family, because that's what you are to the proprietors. Woodland Park Manor, Idlewild, California. Book your room now and tell them you're coming for the festival. You will love it.
Well, all of it's quite a big answer because I listen to everything. Mm-hmm. You know, from the time, I mean, obviously from, I was buying Beatles singles when I was 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
And this was during Beatlemania, you know. And so Rolling Stones and Beatles shaped my childhood along with AM radio.
Right.
And then the just finding amusement in everything, you know, even advertising music, you know, like just hearing odd phrases and And then, getting turned on to classical music at a young age, and, being able to listen to Stravinsky and really enjoy it. It's like, like it was like a film being shown in my brain, I suppose, for a lot of people. And so I absorbed everything I possibly could and got the privilege to watch everything evolve as the 60s turned into the 70s and so on. And, as, the Beatles turned in, and the Beatles and Stones turned into Hendrix, and Hendrix turned into Led Zeppelin, and Led Zeppelin turned into, in my world, jazz fusion, Mahavishnu Orchestra, and Return to Forever, and Weather Report, and finding a lot of fusion that had undeniable beauty in it, and so I grabbed shit from everywhere, man. Just I'll hear a chord progression and that from some fusion album, and I and just use a bit of it that intrigued me and fit it into what I do. So it's everything, man. The range of stuff, especially if you were lived through that era where you had Cat Stevens on the radio next to Stevie Wonder, next to the Rolling Stones. Like there was no segregation of music. Everything, you were exposed to everything, and that is really important. And I think what they've managed to do somehow, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but everyone's split off into these little subcategories. Like you like death metal, thrash metal, doom, whatever, like all this junk, these junk definitions of music that come along. It's annoying to me. And, like Duke Ellington said, there's only two kinds of music, good music and bad music. And so that's where everything comes from. And even, the light picking style of Jimmy Page on Led Zeppelin 3 to that kind of feathering picking style that Cat Stevens did on acoustic, like everything from that kind of subtlety to, plotting stuff, like Black Sabbath and stuff that rolled forward very aggressively. It all appealed to me, so I just, everything, all things music somehow connected with me, and I was pretty lucky. And, on the way to high school in my friend's car, it would be 8-track tapes. It could be anything from, like I said, Emerson, Lake and Palmer to Stevie Wonder, and everything in between. And all those bands sounded completely different. They all sounded different. It's a crazy time because now everything, you can't tell who's who, but the era you're talking about, everybody had their own style completely separate from everybody else, and yet we as audiences, we were able to dig into all of it and appreciate it all, and maybe that's why, I don't know. Good music, that's all it was. And we didn't judge it because it sounded different than the previous thing. And it was just good music, and it was obvious that it was good music, and melody and song structure and emotion of the writer. And so, Christ, I was a Seals and Crofts fan for years, and it doesn't get much sappier than that. In a beautiful way, but it was everything, man. I to this day, a lot of Frank Zappa in there when I was a kid as well. And, things that just freed your mind from convention. And so that's what I'm looking for all the time is something to stun me, like come on, show me what you got here,
Right.
And for example, I'm not usually a guy to put shit down, but a Pantera song came on the radio yesterday, I believe, in the car, and the riff was great, but then that kind of ape vocal comes in and just ruins it for me.
Right.
It's not singing, and so a lot of the Cookie Monster vocals that you hear, it just kind of like, what's wrong, buddy? You couldn't think of a melody, I mean.
Well, I think a lot of that is covering up for lack of talent. I'm just going to put it out there. Since you're being so honest, I'm going to put it out there. A lot of times you'll see a painting and, oh, this person's the next big thing. And you go, that person couldn't come close to a Rembrandt or even a Picasso. So they just throw a bunch of paint and they call it art. Somebody gives it the validation. And I agree with you, man. It's like great musicianship, but the vocalists of these in some of the harder rock and metal bands, it's like, what is that Cookie Monster thing? I love that definition, Cookie Monster vocal.
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, I don't know, man. I suppose it's anger, and angst, and whatever. But there's a way to do it. I mean, even John Lydon sang, and that was anger, but at least it had some melody to it.
Yeah, and it's we're going to remember the Sex Pistols for a lot of reasons, but I was never a big early punk British movement thing myself, but you look back on it now in hindsight and you go, there was a definite vision there, and I just don't see a lot of vision anywhere now, but just me.
I don't know, maybe we've reached an apex, where everything's been done, aside from someone, throat singing Tibetan style, with a mandolin or whatever, I don't know what else can be done, and be done better than what's been done. So I don't know if we've reached this aesthetic peak of music or not, but I mean, I guess I still have faith in the kids that somewhere in some garage there's a band that's I'm going to hear it and say, yeah, there you go, you got it.
I watch some YouTube videos of 11, 12, 13-year-old kids playing, and you just watch them and you go, man, there is hope. There's nothing going on in that, the generation right now that's on top of things, but I see some kids, who are maybe through their dads or their grandfathers and grandmothers that, they're playing stuff that's pretty precise. And there's a good video of Robert Plant, and he's watching an 11-year-old Japanese girl, I think, and she's playing the first Led Zeppelin album on drums all the way through, and her right foot is just phenomenal, and he's just sitting there going, well, maybe there is hope. I was walking by a skateboard park not too long ago, and there was a kid, probably 12, and he was wearing a Pink Floyd T-shirt, and I asked him if he even knew who Pink Floyd was, and he looked at me as though I'd just crawled up from under a rock. He was like, sure, old man, of course I have. But so, yeah, I think there's a glimmer of hope, and we'll just have to see what happens. I mean, I'm pretty much glad. I was going to ask you about what your perception is of where the state of rock and roll sits right now, and I think you've pretty much covered it.
Every small town has that one special spot, a place where strangers become friends and friends share great times together. Idlewild, California has just that spot, Terrence Place Pub and Gallery, where live music and good company create amazing memories. We feature fine wines along with international and domestic tap beers. Our vibe is welcoming, fun, and eclectic. Terrence Place Pub and Gallery is proud to be an official sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema. Come and experience the alpine charm of Terrence Place, located in a village lane in downtown Idlewild, California. We invite you to stop by and have a great time.
So, Chris, let's talk about Masters of Reality for a minute or more. I love that band. I love the whole concept of it. If you could kind of run down how that band actually came about, and how your connection with Ginger Baker and how you guys teamed up to create that amazing project. So, if you don't mind, just kind of, me as a fan, I want to know as much as any listener how the whole thing came about.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a long period of time and a lot of stages of development. I'll start out in the 70s. I was in a hard rock cover band, a couple of them, and loved. We covered Aerosmith and Zeppelin and Blue Oyster Cult, a lot of that. And I was cajoled into being the singer. I never wanted to be a singer. I just wanted to be Jimmy Page or Steve Howe, but I could never get that technical ability of Steve Howe.
Right.
But no patience to sit there and play scales. But anyway, so then punk rock happened in 77, and started hanging in New York, and my attention went from like being a hard rock band more into a punk band, and a lot simpler chords and stuff. And at the same time, disco was happening in New York. And this does play into the Masters story. And I loved the disco music as much as I liked rock music at the time, actually. Stuff like Giorgio Moroder and Donna Summer, I Feel Love. I think, a masterpiece of electronic music.
Right.
And and craft work at the time too. Anything repetitious and hypnotic that went hand in hand with drug use, that was my specialty. And so I would go to punk clubs downtown and discos uptown. And the good thing about it is that as punk rockers, we looked on the cutting edge, and therefore the discos, had no problem letting us in the door.
Right.
So it was like the admission ticket into both worlds. So my love of like really heavy music, Sabbath and stuff like that, and Zeppelin, and also the love of electronic. At the time, we called it Euro disco. That kind of, programmed music that, you could tell it was synth based and click track based, as opposed to the disco funk at the time that had real players going on, which I love that too. Anyway, by the time the late 70s came, I was spinning records and DJing, and I just loved both formats so much that I wanted to try to combine the two of them. And by the time 81 came along, I had matched up with a friend of mine to use a drum machine, synthesizer, and guitar, two-piece outfit. That a lot of it was inspired by Suicide, actually, Alan Vega and Marty Rev.
Right.
And kind of like a bluesy electronic music, if you will, and very repetitious and very drunken, because, we would put all our rhythm tracks on tape and then play along with them. And it was archaic at the time. This is kind of pre-digital, really. And so that, and I was holding a Black Sabbath record. I had posted this recently on Instagram after Ozzy passed, that the Green Warner Brothers label had a misprint that said Masters of Reality on the inner on the album itself. And I thought, oh, there's the band name. And So the first band, well, actually, we went through two. First band name was the Manson Family. The second one was Cousin It from Adam's Family. And then Masters of Reality.
Much better name.
Yeah. And although I like, the predecessor of Marilyn Manson, which Cynthia turned me on to in the early 90s when Manson got big and started to get big. And, I appreciated what he was doing. It was very similar to what we were doing as a two-piece band. So anyway, for the first 3 or 4 years, we were just a two-piece hobbyist, I guess. I hadn't picked up a guitar in quite a while. I was more interested in keyboards and cheap keyboards at the time. And in any case, we were doing these shows with weird black light paintings hanging on the stage, tons of smoke, two-piece, like drunken, I don't know what to call it, man. It was almost like violent performance art. And after a few years of that, got the calling to get back to my roots. Got a drummer and a bass player of the band, and along with a keyboard player, and started the formation of the sound that eventually became, the Masters of Reality on the first album, something like that, because Rick Rubin actually transformed our sound in the recording process. He took the most, bluesy, whimsical, bluesy part of us and focused on that. We were a lot more goth than that. There were more keyboards. It was more purple and smoky, almost like, the Cult Sanctuary kind of vibe,
Right.
And Psychedelic Furs were a big influence as well. Pill. And so anyway, just all of these influences, kind of rolled up into a ball, and then, getting a drummer, and then approached by Rick Rubin in, I think, 86 to come and do some music for MTV. And actually for about 10 or 15 years, the MTV Top of the Hour theme, the bow, 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 that was me playing that.
Wow. I never, no one was ever, that's amazing. That's great.
Yeah, very few people know that. And we did that at Electric Lady Studios. And that was our first, outing with Rick Rubin, was doing some MTV music. And, which, was it was a really nice intro to working in nice conditions at Electric Lady, staying at the Essex House on Central Park South, which, MTV had included all room service into the thing as well, which was a big mistake. I mean, we were in our 20s. And one night, I think we ordered like 20 shrimp cocktails, 5 bottles of vodka and, 6 cases of Heineken, kind of, a line of room service carts at the door, that kind of shit. And then ended up throwing the shrimp cocktails against the wall,
Of course.
Living the dream for like 4 days,
Right.
But anyway,
their mistake.
Yeah, especially for guys who like to drink. We were all bad alcoholics at the time. And 1 second, we're gonna continue this. I just gotta have another cigarette.
No worries.
The morning is smoking time for me. A night time of no nicotine. It all comes back in the morning.
If a guy's not willing to put up with some cigarette breaks when he is interviewing the great Chris Goss, why do it?
Well, it's lit. Break is over. But thanks.
Yeah.
So anyway, first album comes out to good critical acclaim, and first video, nothing like I discussed with Rick, and And then we get put on a shit tour with King's X, opening for King's X.
Right.
They had a bus, we had a van, and one roadie who was exhausted. So me and the bass player did most of the driving.
Mm-hmm.
And we made it all the way from L.A. and Tijuana, all the way across the country to Chicago. And along this time, now I had been working with my partner, Tim Harrington, at the time for 7 or 8 years by that time. And so the 7-year itch was happening, like, you know, he probably feels the same way, but when you know what's going to come out of someone's mouth at every turn,
mm-hmm.
and, you know, you just start annoying each other, you know, from being together and then doing business together and having a shit lawyer that let us sign a shit contract with Rubin, 1940s style fucking contract.
Right.
And I got to Chicago and had enough.
At Pure Bean Coffee, Idlewild, California's premier boutique coffee house, our passion is roasting the highest quality coffee for the most discerning coffee lovers. Our beans are ethically sourced and hand-selected from the world's finest coffee regions. You will notice the enhanced flavor nuances and low acidity with your very first taste. And as a proud sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema, it's our wish to make the best impression possible on filmmakers and attendees from around the globe. So whether it's your first cup in the morning, a midday pick-me-up, or an evening taste of excellence to top off your day, always remember, we at Pure Bean love coffee as much as our customers do.
Let us introduce you to Idlewild's premier boutique inn, Harvey House, an official sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema, featuring premium amenities and luxurious accommodations amidst the backdrop of the majestic San Jacinto Mountains. Situated on the banks of tranquil Strawberry Creek, Harvey House offers our guests perfectly appointed accommodations in which to relax, unwind, and enjoy yourself in privacy and style. Our professionally designed property lends an atmosphere of comfort and repose unmatched just about anywhere, making your stay most memorable indeed. Harvey House, Idlewild, California. Find us at harveyhouseid.com.
No small mountain village would be complete without its favorite local breakfast spot. And the Red Kettle restaurant in Idlewild, California is just that place. As Idlewild's premier downtown breakfast and lunch restaurant, the Red Kettle is exactly what you'd expect. Great food, friendly service, and quaint small town charm, the Red Kettle is the heart of Idlewild's village life. And as an official sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema, all festival badge wearers are treated to a 10% discount on every order. The Red Kettle restaurant, Idlewild, California. Home-style cooking all year round.
Looking for great Mexican cuisine in Idlewild, California? Look no further than La Casita, Idlewild's #1 spot for authentic Mexican fare, serving up both traditional and north-of-the-border specialties. La Casita is also famous for its great beer and wine selection, and the best margaritas to be found anywhere. La Casita, an official sponsor of the Idlewild International Film Festival, and simply the best Mexican food around.
It's cool, it's hip, and it's where Idlewild goes for burgers, fries, sub sandwiches, ice cream, and more. Atomic Cow, downtown Idlewild, California. Official sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema. Fast, fierce, and filmmaker friendly. Be there or be square. Atomic Cow.
And in that interim, I had moved to LA in 87, 88 when we finished recording the album in Los Angeles, the first album, because Rick Rubin had split with Russell Simmons, and Rick moved to LA and started Def American Records after Def Jam.
Right.
And so that's where I met Cynthia at our meeting at BMI, just to find our royalty society. Mm-hmm. And in any case, long story longer, I became really close friends with the guys at Delicious Vinyl, Matt Dyke and Mike Ross. And Matt Dyke was the genius behind Young MC and Tone Loc. Just a wonderful, fucking lovely genius and the funniest guy you'd ever want to meet. And Matt became my best friend. And at the Chicago show, after the show, there was a phone booth outside. I think the club was called the Cubby Bear in Chicago, across from Wrigley Field.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cubs play there. And anyway, I know nothing about sports, but anyway, I called Matt and I said, Matt, I can't do it anymore. And he said, dude, get off that tour. Come back here. I'll sign you. And so Delicious Vinyl bought my contract from Rick Rubin. And so me and the bass player, Googe.
Right, Googe.
It had become, a band of two factions, like me and the bass player versus the guitarist and the drummer.
Right.
And so it was very, very an unpleasant first album to make, very miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And just weird, but a lot of opportunities. We recorded the drum tracks at Atlantic Studios in New York City. Keith Richards was mixing his first album, Talk Is Cheap, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to see Keith and have a few words with him nearly every day we were there. And this had a big influence on how I actually spent the rest of my life. Our sessions were miserable.
Mm.
And, here's this young guy who's like known for rap, signed Slayer and Danzig, had produced the Cult Electric, but still, he was like 25 years old. By this time, I'm nearly 30. And I'm thinking, this guy is, giving his opinion on things. And I just thought, okay, he's the biggest producer in the world right now. So let's see what the fuck happens. Mm-hmm. And that was the first album. And I still can't listen to it because I know if we had had our druthers, it would have been, quite different. And I think a lot more effective.
Mm-hmm.
And in any case, quit the band, moved back to L.A., and Matt Dyke did buy my contract from Rick Rubin. And so we entered our second rap label because we originally signed with Def Jam.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's this weird rock guy from upstate New York now, going from Def Jam to Delicious Vinyl on the opposite coast. and a lot of people I was kind of like Rubin's golden boy in LA at the moment, at that time, and the critics liked the record, and I was like, whatever, I can't do this. I'm going to start this again. And a month later, Ginger Baker joined the band. And after I made that decision, made the leap, and which was a big lesson in following your gut, because I kept putting leaving off for like, okay, I'll do the video and then I'll leave. Okay, I'll do this tour, then I'll leave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that kind of thing. And when you reach the end of your rope, when you're really not enjoying what you love, music has been my absolute love since I was 5 years old,
mm-hmm.
and my escape and my pleasure every day, all day long at school. I couldn't wait to get home to play my records and put my headphones on. And in any case, back to Atlantic Studios in New York, which is not there anymore. Real shame. I mean, historic place near Columbus Circle. Anyway, Keith and his band would arrive in the studio about 7 p.m. at night. And on the elevator up to the second floor where the studio is, I'd hear this laughter if I was in the hallway coming up the elevator, like, like guys who had had a few drinks and a good dinner and who were having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd walk off the elevator holding each other up with their arms around each other. The Stones are huggers.
Right.
I've hung with Keith and Ronnie a bit, and they're hug people, like they're really warm. If you get let inside their circle somehow, they accept you, and it's really lovely. They're good guys. And anyway, I'd see them getting off that elevator all happy and thrilled. And my session was like a funeral home. And I looked at that and said, that's the way you enter a studio.
Right.
That's the way a band comes into the studio, like happy, and I was, I was a drunk and out of control drunk, but not a miserable drunk. I was more like a funny drunk, out of control, but still funny. And I didn't get miserable when I was drunk. I was over the edge, but, in any case, so that changed my life, was how Keith and his band came up that elevator and walked into the studio every day and saying, like, that's the way you do it. And made a vow that whenever I do a record with anybody, that's the way I'd like to do it. And, situations change over the years. I produced a lot of records, and the ones that are made like that with joy and laughter and people having fun are always the best fucking records.
Right.
Always. The miserable records go nowhere. And, very, very rarely. And so that started so Ginger joins the band, a lot of press, MTV stuff. We do that album. It comes out to really good critical acclaim. But the agent and management, we had new managers at the time, started, they put us out with Alice in Chains. And we're like a 3-piece blues jam trio. And the kids who were there to see Alice in Chains, and I was an Alice in Chains fan, but they did not know who the fuck we were, or who the old guy was behind the drum kit. And so it was miserable, but got to know Lane Staley, who was a sweetheart, and but then Lane OD'd on stage and the tour got canceled. He nodded out on the monitors one night in the middle of the country. And so that was over, and that was enough for Ginger. Rock and roll versus, his days in Cream from 67 to late 68, 69.
Right.
Now it's rock and roll 1993. And it's like, hey, welcome to, whatever, doing radio interviews. And Ginger was a great partner. And the first jam we did was like 5 hours long. Our manager was friends with him, and that's how that jam came about. So that record came out. The tour got canned, and then that was enough for Ginger to call me and say, Chris, I've given this 3 years, which he had from 1990 to 93, saying, I've been in this band longer than I was in Cream. and we've only done one album, and this tour has been canceled. It wasn't the right show for us. And I had nothing to say, but I don't fucking blame you. You're absolutely fucking right.
Right.
And so then, I'm kind of on my own again. And so back to, by this time, the Suffer Bus record came out on Chrysalis EMI.
I remember.
Yeah, Delicious Vinyl thought it would be too much of a rock album for them to handle. Because, everyone expected, great success with the band now having Ginger in it, and a video on MTV from the first single. And so a lot of success was expected, but then the tour got fucked, and then we're there with our dick in our hands with nowhere to go. And Ginger, obviously in demand, back in the press and stuff, and he can go out with with various jazz musicians and rock musicians,
Right.
and so the money wasn't enough either. Obviously we're not working now at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, back to Delicious Vinyl. We did a live record in 1996 at the Viper Room, and that kind of predecessed what became of what is now Masters of Reality, the sound of it.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like one sound man we had called it Fancy Blues. And I'll take that, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because if all of the stuff that influences, I know myself, that everything like we discussed a little bit earlier, gets put into music. It might be a phrasing from a Rossini opera. Mm-hmm. It might be a chord progression from John McLaughlin for like 4 seconds long that I liked that becomes a Masters of Reality song. Anything can become a Masters of Reality song. And so, and that brings us to now. In that interim, when we were finishing the record with Ginger, I produced a band called Kyuss from the desert.
Mm-hmm.
I saw them with Cynthia at a club, and there were about 5 people in the crowd, and it was instantaneous. They were incredible, and they were tuned down really low, which was not very common in 1990 when we first saw them. Mm-hmm. Cynthia was playing their demo cassette in the house all the time, and it grew on me. And so we went to their first show in Los Angeles at a little club. I think it was called the Gaslight. It was in an alley off of Selma near Hollywood Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
And they blew me away. So now the way they sounded, I knew that any of the metal producers in the early 90s who it was easily recognizable that this band had it. They swung like motherfuckers. The riffs were great, and they're all like 17 or 18 years old. And so I thought, okay, I have to record this band. I'd learned some shit doing the first album with Rick and the second record with Ginger. And so I thought, okay, I have to produce this band so some rock guy doesn't come in and ruin them, like make them tune up and tighten up. And metal at the time was very staccato. It actually still is. Everything's and it sounds like someone typing to me. And with few exceptions, but Kyuss was like lava. It kind of like a big blob kind of swinging along. And I thought, oh, fuck, if some guy gets a hold of this and ruins it, this is going to be done because they're young. They could maybe be talked into something, and not even know they're being talked into it because they were full of piss and vinegar. They were rebels, which is another reason why, I was attracted to it. They had that spirit. And so anyway, the Blues for the Red Sun comes out. People loved the way it sounded, and it was the way Kyuss sounded. So, it was a no-brainer. It's just record them, basically. Some arrangement work, a sequencing, and make a rock and roll record that was really heavy and palatable. And so it was a wonderful record to make. They were first time in a nice studio at Sound City in Van Nuys, which Dave Grohl, thank God, documented that studio in his movie properly.
Right.
And that became my home base studio for years and years. So anyway, now I'm a producer / writer / guitar player, whatever. And so yeah, and then the 90s go by, and after spending a lot of time producing in the 90s, because the money to produce records was available. The day of big budgets, like a band newly signed to Geffen, say, or any kind of a label that had dough, with their first album would have a budget of $160,000.
Right.
And so it was like it was doable. You could spend time doing pre-production and rehearsals and go to a good studio and actually, have some chains off your back.
Right.
I mean, what has happened now, the budgets got destroyed. I remember when Green Day came out with Dookie, whenever the fuck that was, how many years ago now. I'm not a fan, but the rumor was at the time that they recorded that record for $6,000. And I remember that moment. It was like that was like license for all the labels to like chop the budgets down to nothing.
Sure.
And so you have a really cool band, and who calls me, and they have a deal, and they have a $15,000 total recording budget,
right.
and they're from Europe, and they want to come to the desert to record. Well, you figure that out, and I have figured it out. I opened a studio in Palm Springs briefly in the late 90s with some friends, and I was able to pull off some stuff like that, but to the loss of a lot of money and all of my gear. And so, and then I started making records for a label in Holland called Mascot. And that's where I am now. And that's where our new record, The Archer, that just came out this spring, is on that label. And I leave in a month to go tour that record again. The first time we tried to tour it earlier this year, and I got bronchitis the second day I was in Europe during rehearsals. And so was able to pull off like 4 or 5 shows, and then, but in Berlin had a fever on stage, and I'm like, they're going to carry me off the fucking stage. I'm singing and I'm going to pass out,
Right.
And so so the tour got canceled, and it was a disaster. So now, a month from now, I have to go back and make up for it, and that's what I'm preparing for now by chain smoking every day.
But it's still your passion's there, and that's proven out by the fact that no matter what happens, you're just one of those people that's willing to put their head down and just make it work, and that's what a lot of people don't have, I feel, in music. There is no music scene anymore. Music scenes don't pop up like they used to. They just don't. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I just think that the passion isn't there, and it takes people like you to sort of keep it alive, And we were talking about that, Kyuss, and there's a lot of talk about the desert rock sound, and I know that's not, you don't like to talk about it or brag about it, but you've been credited with having sort of launched with Masters and with Queens of the Stone Age and Kyuss. In past interviews that I've read, you've been very humble and downplayed your involvement in that whole era, but everyone I've ever spoken with about it says you were pretty much the catalyst for much of that. And can you talk about how you look at desert rock, as it's called, and where you think you actually fit into the overall beginnings and middle of that movement? To me, it's just great music, and putting any sort of label, as you said earlier, to anything might be doing it a disservice. But for all intents and purposes, you are sort of the desert rock hand of God to a lot of people. You're still the legend of you, even people who don't know you or haven't had a chance to work with you, talk about you. And so I know a lot of musicians in Joshua Tree and Palm Desert area and everything. And you're the guy. So where do you put yourself in all of that? Just you personally?
Going for a hike and just want the best beef or vegan jerky on the planet before you hit the trail? Then Coyote Red's Idlewild, California is where your search comes to an end. We offer a variety of premier natural foods, including our world-famous House of Jerky brand, barbecue sauces, hot sauces, treats, sweets, and so much more. An official sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema, we are located right downtown at the Fort, directly across from Idlewild Park. Coyote Red's is where your search for the best beef or vegan jerky on the planet comes to an end.
Every small town has that one special spot, a place where strangers become friends and friends share great times together. Idlewild, California has just that spot, Terrence Place Pub and Gallery, where live music and good company create amazing memories. We feature fine wines along with international and domestic tap beers. Our vibe is welcoming, fun, and eclectic. Terrence Place Pub and Gallery is proud to be an official sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema. Come and experience the alpine charm of Terrence Place, located in the Village Lane in downtown Idlewild, California. We invite you to stop by and have a great time.
For over 70 years, the historic Rustic Theater and Entertainment Center in Idlewild, California, has been the home for movies and live events for all of the communities that encompass the San Jacinto mountain range. And as the forever home of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema, the Rustic has played host to some of the greatest indie films from around the world, as well as blockbuster first-run movies and music and comedy events. And the Idlewild Festival has been proud to call the Rustic its home base since 2010. So, whether you're in Idlewild for the film festival, hiking or rock climbing, or just exploring the beautiful mountain village of Idlewild, California, make sure to add the Rustic Theater to your list of must-visit spots. For a beer or fine wine at the Rustic Tavern, a tasty meal from the snack bar, or just a great movie date or family night out, the Rustic Theater and Entertainment Center is the right choice in Idlewild. Pop in and say hello.
Idlewild, California is known for its many quaint shops, but none is more quaint or special than Shala Tea Company in downtown Idlewild. With a wide variety of regional, international, and exotic blends to choose from, Shala is more than just a tea shop. It's an experience for the soul. As an official sponsor of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema, Shala Tea Company offers a discount for all festival badge holders. And what film festival journey would be complete without just the right tea bag in your travel cup? Shala Tea Company, Idlewild, California. Experience it.
I think maybe my role was like, kind of opening the door and showing it to the world. Mm-hmm. I used what little notoriety I had at the time to help expose, what was going on here. Mm-hmm. The sound of it and the real father of it, Mario Lally from a band called Fatso Jetson, mm-hmm. and he has other projects as well, but Fatso Jetson, he was like the local hero before I even knew who Kyuss was. Mm-hmm. He was like, Palm Desert area. And it was very jammy and very different and from anything, that was commercial. Mm-hmm. And Kyuss and the chops that vibe, even the chord progressions and the style of jam in it, I attribute back to Mario for influencing those kids. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky that I got to experience all the changes that rock went through from 1965 through the present. Mm-hmm. And how, how the ball rolls along and where it might go to next. And I think that was kind of an advantage to communicate, with them and with the local musicians around here and knowing history and where they might fit in and And keeping in mind, and this is really important for me, is that when I make a record with a band, it's not just the album that's being made, but opening the door for the next record. Like sensing a musical instinct that the band has, that you can tell they're kind of searching in an area that's not quite there yet. They have the material for now that's for the current record, but some of the stuff is hinting at where they may want to go. And that's what I love to do, is like open those doors that allows what the next record might be. And aesthetically and even commercially, how that would tumble into the scene. And being like a pop fanatic, I mean, I have this fantasy that I could be 80 years old and teaching, at a Swiss university about, pulling out random records from thousands of albums and explaining why the color of the cover was appropriate for 1973.
Right.
and how the colors and the sound and the production and the haircuts and everything, how it all moved along, and how each step of the way, laid the groundwork for the next step. And, how, when disco started happening in like 76-ish and, getting really popular, and why, like, there was the antithesis of it with Southern rock and country rock at the time. It was like, seeing those, like, well, goddamn that disco, we're going to do our, Sweet Home Alabama. and I love both of it. You know what I mean? Leonard Skinner or fucking Donna Summer, all the same shit to me. It's good music. And so, that is the thing I brought to it, was the ability, and I don't know if I've lost it or not, because pop culture is not too fun to look at right now.
Right.
I used to enjoy it for decades, and being able to watch the transformation, even from the late 70s into the 80s, of Public Image and Psychedelic Furs and The Cure, and even Duran, these different stages that happen, the way it rolls along, that was really enjoyable. And Bowie had a lot to do with all of it. And watching Bowie over the years for decades and decades, and just adoring that man. And I guess trying to emulate my heroes, Jimmy Page and David Bowie. You keep things moving. There's some bands that do their thing, like AC/DC. And AC/DC doesn't need to do an acoustic record or a synth record, to move along. They have their thing, and God bless them, But, there are other bands that get, other artists that get bored and want to bring other elements into it and experiment a bit at sometimes great risk, and a lot of times, like Zeppelin, with great success. But anyway, we all know that story, and but I think that's where I've fit in along the way, is kind of just helping people move along, and so now I think I've injected myself into it enough where it's almost like I've impregnated enough of it, that they almost don't need me anymore,
right?
And with the budget's gone, and with the stuff that I've done that got into Queens of the Stone Age, got into Foo Fighters, got into electronic music, even with UNKLE, that I produced a few records for a existential electronic band, and just injecting myself into it. That's what I've done, and I hear what I've done in a lot of music, and it's around the world now. But it's like Jaco Pastorius, he had a fretless bass style that the whole world picked up on. And Jocko didn't get royalties from the 1,000 other bass players that started playing like him.
Right.
And so that's where I'm at now. I love to work on music. I'm always looking for an interesting project to do. And I wait. I don't go to LA and press the flesh and, backstage. I don't go to Coachella anymore. I can't, it's just like, I'm not comfortable in that commotion any longer. Been there, done that. And Cynthia's the same way. We feel like we saw the best and kind of just watching the wheels now, as John Lennon said, and the wheels I'm watching suck right now. It's a whole different fucking thing now, man. It's about, mega investment into some cute face and a cute ass and terrible non-melodic music. I like the sparseness of a lot of it. The music you hear when you walk into an Apple store or Starbucks, I want to kill myself in about 5 minutes, but there's a quality to it, the simplicity, that's admirable, and that's it. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's where I am right now.
Well, you've built this is what I think is an awesome thing, but you've got a legacy that you've planted that flag, but you're still out there doing it and looking for new adventures musically and touring and all that. I mean, there are still adventures to be had, and you're like this explorer who now you've got a new ship and you're going to go make some new maps. And I love that, man, about you, is that you just, you don't really slow down or rest on your laurels. You've still got things to say. It's awesome.
Yeah, when I'm up to it, I mean, it's actually honestly a very depressing scene. And the last decade, sitting here watching and listening has, been kind of disheartening. There are some bands out there that I like Unknown Moral Orchestra, that are trying to cut new ground. And, and when you're 20 years older than a band that can, tour in a van and stay at friends' houses around the country and that kind of level to get to where they are, I'm past that. So I'm kind of like, my tastes are too expensive for my status now. and that's a good quote, isn't it?
I'm going to get a T-shirt made.
Yeah. So, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I had written to, I in contact through Instagram with a dear friend of mine who recently won I think an Oscar maybe for music that he did. And I said, well, if you know anyone who knows a good arranger, my strength is I'm a really good song arranger. And I said, if you come across, music that needs arranging, give me a call. And his response is, no one pays for good talent anymore. And that's so true, man. I mean, why do it when some schmuck on their laptop in their bedroom can chop something together and not work with a band, not do transitions or a chordal arrangement that's beautiful, or
not play off each other, working head to head with somebody and playing off each other, and it doesn't happen anymore. Which is why I come back to I was talking to you about I'd love to talk about arranging and doing original scores for some of my films, because everything you've ever done in your life is, to me, cinematic in my brain. As a musician who's transferred over into directing and films and writing screenplays and being pretty successful at it, to me, part of what I look at my film career as a throwback to drive-in movies. That's all I see in my head, and right. The music has to be as raw as the vision if you know what I mean. And so I went looking for a band to add music, not soundtrack, but I mean, not scoring, but soundtrack stuff to this upcoming crime drama, sort of a Tarantino kind of thing I'm shooting this fall called Monkey Grip. And I went looking, I spent a day and a half just on YouTube and on, wherever I could find new music, looking for a feel. And I found a band called the Wallow Hollows. They're out of Indiana. And their songs they fit the mood perfectly of the movie. And the way they record is very old school. There's no synths or electronics. They just do a lot of cool acoustic and electric guitar stuff with great drums and a singer who's kind of a throwback to the days of, I don't know if you remember Springsteen's Tom Joad era, or the stuff that Eddie Vedder did for that movie Dead Man Walking. But that's kind of where that's what I was looking for, and it came into that. So I found them, and we've been working with them, and it's great. But as far as scoring films go, I like your approach to your ability to sort of bounce from very raw, very kind of basic rock arrangement stuff into, but let's add this element, which may be too electronic for a whole song, but for a piece, let's say half of a bridge where we do something. That's what I find interesting. People like you who are able to adapt to a situation, let's say in a movie score. Adapt different sounds and things. And I just think you've always had an interesting approach to not hating things, but saying, like you said, disco had its moments where there was some magic there, and people just out of hand just kind of kick it under the rug. And your approach to things just seems very cinematic to me as well from a musician's standpoint. So, yeah, you've just always been kind of, even though you had no way of knowing it, but you've always been kind of influential on me in just thinking about things outside of the box a little bit, because I think that's what you've done your whole life, is think outside the box.
Yeah, and that's why I'm living the way I do, but very modestly. Mm-hmm. And there's a price to be paid for it. And but I'm not ashamed of anything other than my own laziness, and I think it's just built up frustration,
sure,
and looking for things that I can compliment. If I can't compliment it, I know it's not for me, but if I think, oh wow, yeah, I'm really interested in this. I'm there, man,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
But coming back to the lack of money in recording and stuff, that's what I'm finding, is that bringing in a budget for scoring movies and for licensing certain songs and things, there is money there. So if that's how you have to do it, a backdoor way to get things produced is to present them to movies and to film. That may be a way to do a lot of stuff and get a lot of music projects off the ground doing it that way, because there's, what's a record label nowadays? I don't even know what that is, what it looks like nowadays. It's
no, they don't exist.
Right.
They're what's, audience and research, whatever A&R is supposed to mean.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't exist. No one but gets a band or a musician or an artist to develop them anymore.
Right.
It's just, there's no development. Either you have it there or fuck off.
Right.
And so yeah, I'm down, man. You know what I mean? And I there are a lot of pieces of music I've done that say, oh man, I wish Scorsese could hear this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And yeah.
I was just talking about Scorsese with a friend of mine last night about why his movies are great. Well, he's a great director, and he develops great screenplays, but also he's willing to go out and spend that money to get the best soundtrack of any place around.
Unbelievable licensing going on. You know what I mean?
He's willing to spend a quarter of his budget on songs by the Stones and by everybody you can think of.
I'm just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it's great.
Goodfellas. I mean, fuck, there's like a $1 million song every fucking 30 seconds, you know?
That's and not just popping in and out like it's playing on a jukebox. I mean, he makes it a part of the score.
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. But
that's my thing. I'll talk to you about it later on. I know you're so busy and ready to go on the road, and I'm getting ready to shoot this thing. But, I'll probably, send you the script just so you can get a feel for it. And, who knows? But like I said, I'm bringing the money, part of the money coming into the film is in developing the scoring and the soundtrack. And that's where I think that it's worthwhile putting money into artists and developing scoring and soundtracks for movies that just put them over the edge, which is what Scorsese does. He takes a scene and it's already dramatic, and it's all, Jack Nicholson trying to shake off cops who are following him down the freeway and yelling into his phone, "Get him off my fucking ass," things like that. But the whole while there's some cool Stone song underneath it. It's just to build the drama with a really well-known song. It's quite the art, and I'm just interested in doing that. But I don't want to keep you forever, Chris. I know you're busy, but one more question I'd like to ask you is about. You've done so many recording projects, but what are some of the standout, most memorable recording projects in your life? I know you had mentioned in an interview I read at some point that there was a project, the Goon Moon project was particularly enjoyable to you, but give us one or two of your favorite projects that you've been involved with that you think, I know my listeners would be interested.
Oh, wow. It's quite a list.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, a couple of things pop into my head. Getting to, doing the first record I did with UNKLE, and bringing these two, DJs basically, to the desert and into a small studio in Los Angeles as well. And doing electronic music under those conditions. And they wanted, more guitar. They wanted more desert rock in their electronic music. So that was really interesting, because they were kind of naive on the rock side of things, but very skilled on the rhythmic side of things. It became a good matchup because rhythmically, and what was going on was very interesting. And give me a beat, man, and I'll give you a song. So that was very enjoyable, especially the first thing we did, War Stories, it was called. And then, looking back, the first two records with Kyuss were incredibly fun to do. Blues for the Red Sun and Welcome to Sky Valley. Working with Scott Weiland was great.
I can imagine. Yeah,
it was edgy and dangerous. He was pretty fucked up, but he was fucking brilliant. And that edginess, that was in the air, created really good rock music. And and then hearing his voice come through the speakers, and just when his voice came through the speakers, it was like it's a hit song. You know what I mean? Instantly, what the fuck does this guy have? This guy who's soaking wet from sweating because he's going through a mini drug withdrawal in that particular time of the day, but inside, crawling out of his own skin, which was very uncomfortable to watch. But seeing this guy trying to struggle out of that, I don't say enjoyable, but let's say interesting. we did a song for a soundtrack, Tank Girl soundtrack called Rocket Girl. And the day before we were recording it in rehearsal, he was listening to Nirvana. Hey, I got a new complaint, heart-shaped box.
Right.
And that hey, that he's listening to Heart-Shaped Box over and over again on a little boom box in the studio. And then he starts to do the vocal on the track that we're doing for the soundtrack that became like a almost a hit single. And he does this chorus with hey, rocket girl, in a completely different angle, modality, tonality, different key, like, where Kurt's was like kind of like a minor thing, and here's Scott, using that hey in a major chorus.
Right.
And it was like, how the fuck did he transform that into his song? And just like to be able to watch him listening to that over and over again in the studio, and then a day later coming up with this hook for his song with a hey in it. And that was just fascinating to see this guy, who is very uncomfortable in his skin, and God rest his soul. And a few months before he died, his management called and said, Scott wants to work with you again. Are you interested? I was like, fuck yeah.
Is this a trick question?
Yeah, give me a call, when you're ready. When you work with junkies, which I've worked with like a lot of the most notorious junkies in the business, it's always, let's say, interesting. The mood can flip from joy to fucking hell in 10 seconds.
Right.
And, but yeah, having a lot of experience in that world myself, and knowing and watching the symptoms and the mood that happens, and knowing how to try to control it a bit and calm them down. And, and taking Scott into a side room in the studio and just playing soft acoustic guitar while we were talking, and watching that kind of like comfort him. And you got to open your heart to people, on a real open level. And so that's the part of the business that, that why, musicians age really quickly, unless they have great makeup artists and plastic surgeons. But anyway, yeah, man, it's emotional, and it's soul, and it's your heart, And so I take it very personally. And, so yeah, it's always been a very personal thing to me. I mean, I told my dad when I was 6 years old that I liked John Lennon better than him. And I remember his face drop when I told him that. This was like 1966, probably 6 months before he died. And to this day, can still see his face when I said, I was mad at him for some reason. I said, I like John Lennon better than you. And, and here's this little brat, Beatle freak. And anyway, yeah, so it goes deep, man, and there's a lot of joy and tears in the whole process. And, and a lot of it's, it's silent. You don't want to be too public about it or over dramatic about it. And so you try to put on a brave face. And I think that's what, Paul McCartney's song, My Brave Face, even when Linda passed, that guy has such fucking stoicism. And, to like not bring his agony into the public eye, and be so, kind of brush it off almost annoyingly, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And Bowie was the same way, just so brave that they never, had a nervous breakdown on camera. And I'm sure many times they had been very close to it.
Idlewild isn't just a scenic mountain town, it's a living gallery. The Art Alliance of Idlewild supports local artists, funds youth art programs, and hosts world-class events that turn our town into an art lover's destination. Become a member, attend an event, or donate to support the arts. Follow us on Instagram at Art Alliance of Idlewild, or visit artinidlewild.org and be part of our creative community.
And in Europe, for example, this tour upcoming, and especially what's going on in Europe, and with around the whole world with mass surveillance and and digital ID and all the shit that's going on, and be brave, like that's the parting message is, like, man, hold your ground, because quote James Brown, rather die standing on our feet than live on our knees. And that's it, man, and I think that holds true for every occupation. It is a very, very, it ain't easy. Let's put it that way, baby.
Yeah. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Stephen Savage Show. But before I go, Chris, tell us how one can find out more about you and what you got going on in your music. Is there a website someplace, or you just post things on Instagram, or what's your favorite venue for getting the word out about what you're doing?
Well, unfortunately, I'm very inept at it. I have an Instagram account. It's at Official Masters of Reality, and that's the Instagram thing. That's where I'm most likely to do stuff, because Instagram's simple. Although I don't know how to use it. I can't split the screen or put music behind anything. I don't know. I don't go in depth that much. I get really frustrated. And I mean, I bought a $3,000 fucking MacBook Pro a few years ago that's been sitting in a cupboard untouched since I bought it. I used it to play tournament poker for about a month and then put it away. And that was it. I mean, I love to play cards as much as anything. In any case, there is a mastersofreality.com. I have very little to do with that. I think the mascot, the label in Holland, runs that. I have no idea. I haven't even looked at it in months, but I think it's still there. And I think there's a link to it on the Instagram page, I believe. I mean, that's how, kind of distant I am from that. And
that's okay. You've got better things to do. Create.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean? I'm not very good at self-promotion, as you may have found out.
Well.
And, but music, man, that's all the other accoutrements surrounding it I'm terrible at. I'm the worst businessman that ever lived.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it. Another episode of the Stephen Savage Show in the can. I want to thank everyone for listening in and for spreading the word about the show, which has been vital to increasing our listenership on a daily basis on every platform, taking us into the thousands of downloads every week. And we at the Savage Podcasting Network really appreciate it, and you listeners. And you can find us, of course, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. So for my producer and filmmaking sidekick, Nicole Hughes, the podcast executive producer, Steve Tuma, engineer Maurice Sudo, Cranium Wheel executive producers Jonathan Short, and the entire Savage Podcasting Network team, as well as for Mr. Chris Goss and myself, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Ciao, Steve. Thank you.
All right, and that about wraps it up for this episode of the Stephen Savage Show. I hope you'd enjoyed my interview with musician and producer Chris Goss. I want to thank my producer, Nicole Hughes Bradshaw, executive producer Steve Tuma, my engineer, Maurice Sudo, and all our team for keeping things running so smoothly here at Cranium Wheel Studios and at Radio Free Idlewild. And I'd like to thank all of you for downloading and listening in to the show, which helps keep our numbers up way up there on all platforms, and we really appreciate it. So thanks for listening, and remember, listen like no one is watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Radio Free Idlewild, the official music and podcast station for Idlewild, California, the San Jacinto Mountains, and beyond.